What's going on, everyone? This is Mekkah, and we're back for another day with the Fire Emblem character sorter. Today we're going to be doing an FE7 list. We're going to try making a better one than Mangs did, which won't be too hard. You guys should compare our lists, see what the differences are. And yeah, let's get into it soon. I got some nice Pink Floyd in the background, but I know I'm going to make you guys suffer through the FE7 soundtrack instead, for copyright reasons. I just need some background music for myself, so if I end up singing along with like the one or two lyrical parts of the song, you know why that is. Pink Floyd is really good, by the way, you should listen to it. I was going to do Porcupine Tree, but then there were like too many lyrics, and I was like, I can't think and talk at the same time while also listening to songs with lyrics. It's too hard. Anyway, you guys know the drill, I think. So I'm using the Fire Emblem character sorter. It can be found at fesorter.tumblr.com. Link will be in the description. I'm going to tier characters from best to worst gameplay-wise. Their personality doesn't matter. All that matters is their gameplay value and how useful they are to a player. I'm going to assume that the person trying to decide which is better, it's kind of a complicated way to phrase it. Basically, I'm assuming you kind of know the game already, so you know you don't play like an idiot, and you know how to use them optimally. And it's not going to be for like LTC, but I'm going to assume that you're not dawdling around. You're not looking to spend forever on maps, basically. Not LTC, but like efficiency. So yeah. Also, I should mention this. FE Sorter's images are down for some reason, but I felt like doing a character sorter now, so that's why I had to turn off display images while sorting, which sucks. I'm definitely not going to spend an hour editing all the right images, so at least I left the text there. So we got Sonia versus Dimstella. Neither of these are playable, so tie. I'm just going to tie every non-playable character, of course. There we go. First character is Farina versus Carla. Both of them Hector mode exclusive. Carla is a horrible late-joining Swordmaster with no added value to your team whatsoever. She's just an Easter egg, basically. She's not meant to be a good character. I'm actually very glad they did that. I'm glad they didn't make her really powerful, because then you would be semi-forced to use Barter. Whereas Farina, she's not great, but she is good if you train her. And she's not too hard to train. If you're not looking to LTC her map, you can train her up pretty easily on all the monks that appear on the upper right of starting point. Just be careful of the ballistas. Be careful of whatever else can kill her. But generally she's okay with like a pure water or barrier boost. And then she can promote the chapped after and just be totally fine filler unit. She does cost a lot of gold, but I'm not going to use that against her. And I'm also not going to use against Carla that you gotta raise Bartra, because I'm rating these units from the moment they turn blue, alright? I think it's unfair to rate them, give them a bad rating for their recruitment costs. Because most people, they played through the game wanting to recruit everyone, regardless of how hard it is. So even if you were not going to use Carla or Farina, you would still probably fulfill their requirements. At least that's if you're like recruiting everyone. And I'm assuming you want to recruit everyone. So yeah. Renault versus Athos. You know, I actually like Renault as a unit. I don't think he's too bad. He just joins too late. And the same goes for Athos in a way. Athos is much better, of course. I'm just saying this about Renault in general. I think he's better than like a bad unit that joins early, because Renault is never a bad unit. He's just not as good as some of your other units, but you know, he has some decent utility, but Athos is like a better version of him. So we'll go with Athos. Nino versus Jafar. Well, Nino is like a bottom 5 unit because she just joins so underleveled. She dies to almost everything. I'm not telling you guys anything new here. Jafar isn't that great either. He is also unmounted and he's locked to swords. And in FE7 this is a really big deal because there's a lot of 1-2 range enemies and 2 range enemies, but they're all very weak. So even a mediocre unit with 1-2 range tends to do more on an enemy phase than Jafar. Like if you put Jafar in a field of shamans, mages, and archers, he's only going to kill one of them per turn, whereas someone like Urk or Lowen, even if their offense isn't as good on player phase as Jafar's, they're still going to counter all these enemies and probably kill most of them, if not all of them. But even if they took multiple rounds to kill each one of them, they would still get through these enemies faster than Jafar. So that's in general why 1-2 range is so important in FE7. But even though Nino has 1-2 range, her stats are just too weak to do anything. I'm not going to be this elaborate on every part, but these are important things to get established when I'm rating characters, and they will apply to many more ratings that I'm giving. Penta versus Louise, well, Penta's better. I think most people can agree to that. I can think of one exception, maybe. I think even Mangs didn't rate Louise higher here. Heath versus Hawkeye. Both of these are really good units that I think you should always use and almost always deploy when you have the chance. But I'm going to give the edge to Heath because I value movements and attack speed pretty highly. Hawkeye isn't so slow that he doesn't double anything, but there are things that he doesn't double. So his combat is not as perfect as it could be. He can use the Brave Axe though, but then he loses 1 to range. His combat is still like really good, don't get me wrong, but Heath can also get good combat while also having 1 to 2 more move, and he can fly. Like the desert is really good for him. Night of Farewells is a map where he just flies so far. Although I guess Hawkeye is one of the better foot units in the game, especially since he can walk on water and peaks, but Heath hasn't beat, I think. Ninian versus Isadora. Ninian is a dancer, and I rate dancers really highly. I don't think she's the best unit ever, but she's like top 5 at least. Isadora I think is decent, but not super amazing or anything. She's better than like a lot of casual players think, because 5th worst paladin, well guess what? That's still better than a lot of classes. I think she's still better than most foot units that join later than her at least. But for here we'll go with Ninian. Fiora versus Legoltz. Let me take a sip of water. So Legoltz is the unfortunate case of a second thief that joins after most of the thief utility is kind of over with. And he has to share all the credit for the thief utility he has with Matthew. So imagine if there was like a chest with 5,000 gold in it, and only Legoltz and Matthew could open it, they would each get like 2,500 credits, basically. They would get credit for half of the gold you take. But then the moment he joins, you can also buy chest keys, and you know, there's just no real point to using Legoltz sometimes. I still use Legoltz quite a bit when I'm playing casually because I don't feel like planning out chest key uses, that's the honest story, so I just use Legoltz with a lockpick. But Fiora is a pretty good flyer, not the best flyer ever. Her stats are kind of mediocre at joining time, but they can become pretty fine as long as she's trained. Her strength isn't the best ever, but there are ways around that. And being a flyer makes up for so many things. Like just from the moment she joins, there are just so many flyery things that she can do. And you need at least one good flyer in FE7, I feel like, to get through the game quickly. So we'll go with Fiora here. Raven versus Canas. Raven has the better combat for sure. He actually has the best offense in FE7 besides maybe Marcus. He's one of the very few units that like doubles and has the strength of 2 at KO at base level, which is ridiculous. And Canas, he doesn't do that until he promotes, but Canas does have staff utility. But the thing about staff utility in FE7 is you get warp pretty late, and warp is like the best staff ever. I feel like the other staffs don't matter as much. I guess restore is nice though for like more casual used players. Or, you know, in general, restore is pretty good for Hector hard mode because there are a lot of status staffs. And, you know, I know Canas starts with E staffs, but it's pretty easy to get him up to a higher staff rank. The game just gives you a lot of time to hit a higher rank before you get to the chapters where you need that higher rank. So, for example, warp is very late, so you can use all these defense maps to spam his staff rank. You need 15 heals to get from E to D, which is pretty easy to do. And then you can start using mend, and then once you get C, it goes really fast because you start using barrier every turn. You can buy barriers in the secret shop in Kinship's Bond. And then once you get to B, you can also use the buyable physics. So going from E to A staffs is actually really easy in this game. It's very different from FE6. So I think this is actually kind of a tough choice because I don't like Raven all that much anymore. Manx really underrated him in his FE7 playthrough, for sure. I gave him a higher star rating. But he is a really good offensive unit that can kill a threat. And there's not many threats in FE7, but there are some. And he's also pretty good against bosses after promoting. I'm gonna go... Jeez, this is a hard one. See, Canas is such a good promotion. He gets like +4 attack speed on promotion that lets him double most of FE7's enemies. And at that point, once they're both promoted, they one-round almost anything anyway. Contrary to popular belief, Luna isn't all that good on Canas. It's only good against like a couple of bosses, but even those bosses are easily dispatched by like brave weapons. With more ease than using Luna does, so I think most people would vote Raven for sure. I'm gonna vote Canas. I like Canas a lot. Oswin versus Guy. They're both early game units that fall off as the game goes on. Oswin is very, very tanky. He can take a hit from like every enemy in the map and still survive, which is great. Guy is more offensively oriented, but he suffers that 1 to 2 range problem, or rather the fact that he doesn't have it. He just doubles and crits 1 enemy per turn, kind of like Jafar. So, Guy is not the worst character ever, but Oswin I think is better, just for his early game utility. I wouldn't really use Oswin much past the early game, unless you really like him. Wallace versus Lowen. Well, Wallace is like a bottom tier unit, and Lowen, he joins early. I'll talk more about him later when it's like a less obvious matchup. Niels versus Lucius. Well, Niels is like a dancer, but he has very specific and low utility in Hector Hard mode. Oh, by the way, I am assuming that you do go through Limb mode, because that's the mode I have the most experience with. Like usually when I play Hector Hard mode, I play Limb mode first. But I'm not including Limb mode in the rating because it's just too easy. I'm assuming you went through Limb mode, and then I'm also assuming that, Limb mode doesn't really count for their utility. So basically, Nils joins like chapter 30 or so, and Lucius joins much earlier. So in that way, Lucius, I kind of want to rate Nils the same as Ninian, to be honest, because I consider Ninian and Nils one entity. I think I'm gonna do that. So what I'm gonna have to do is rate Nils. Nah, fuck it. I'm gonna. I don't know how to rate this. See, what I was gonna say is I'm gonna rate Nils the same as Ninian, and just put her over every other unit that I'm also putting Ninian above. But then I'd have to remember. Well, whatever. We'll go with it. Because if I rate Nils on his own merits, like he joins chapter 30, he's not that good. He's like 8th level. He's good for a couple of chapters, but I think I'm just gonna rate him as if he's Ninian. And Ninian is like one of the best units in the game. Lucius is not bad though. Wrath versus Matthew. Thief utility from Matthew is pretty good. He gets a bit of gold, quite a bit in fact. He gets a silver card, which is not necessary, but it's really good for buying physics and stuff. He gets a hero crest, I believe. Either that or a knight crest, or even both, if you haven't picked both chests in chapter 17. Yes, I'm assuming Hector mode, by the way. So yeah, he has a lot of things going for him. After that, not too much, and he shares credit with the golds and chest keys and all that. But before that, it's pretty good. Wrath, I like him for ranked runs, but outside of that, there's not too much he can do. There's a couple maps after he joins where he's pretty useful. For some reason, there's always something to do for a unit with 7 move and 2 range. Use like Longbow and Bravebow to do some neat things, kill wyverns. It's pretty cool, but I think Matthew is better. Dorcas versus Sarah. Why are we getting 2 beam units? Well, Sarah has like early game healing utility, but not too much of it. And then after Priscilla joins, you kind of don't want to use 2 healers. And Sarah is definitely the worst of the 2. There's better magic growth, but her base is so much worse that it doesn't matter. It's like Natasha versus Mulder, but more magnified because of the horse. And Dorcas, he has good like early game offense. He actually has the highest availability in the game if you count Limb mode. But there just isn't too much that he can do. Because he's one of the few units that doesn't reliably double in Hector Hard mode, since he is so slow due to that 20% speed growth. His base is actually fine at 6, but once people start doubling, he falls behind quite a bit. So I'm gonna rate both of these are pretty useless after early game, but I think Dorcas has actually more long-term use in a way. Although not really, because Sarah can be used as a warper, or even rescue, or hammer, or restore. Yeah, I think I like Sarah better actually. You can also deploy her in the desert map instead of Priscilla. It's pretty nice. Florina versus Will. Well, Will is like one of the worst units in the game, and Florina is one of the best, so this is no contest. Saint versus Kent. Okay. I think most people will agree that Saint is better. Both of them can double pretty easily, and Kent's other advantage besides speed is skill. But it's like Saint has some hit issues, but due to weapon triangle, they're not big issues. And once Saint starts doubling, he just starts 2-hit KOing everything. Whereas Kent actually misses out on 2-hit KOs quite a bit. Saint can actually 2-hit KO, like, I think he can 2-hit KO Wyvern Riders at some point using just like a steel axe or something. He's insane. Pun not intended. Okay. Eliwood versus Hector. Well, Hector, it kind of sucks that he's locked to 5 move for all game, but at least he's not locked to using swords for half the game. And at least his personal weapon has like weapon triangle advantage as opposed to weapon triangle disadvantage against everything you want to use an anti-armor or anti-horse weapon against. Basically, it's like Wolfbeal has like 9 more might than the Rapier does or something. It's insane. So I like Hector a lot more. Bartra versus Sephiel. Well, you got off well, Bartra, because Sephiel is not playable. Marcus versus Merlinus. I'm not going to rate Merlinus, so another easy win here. Good job, Marcus. You beat Merlinus. Not playable. Not playable. Not playable. I wonder if ties make it take longer. Athos versus Farna. You know, Athos is like really good, but how much credit can you give the guy for one chapter, right? Farna is kind of helping like a lot more chapters. If you know she's your 4th flyer, and when Vida joins, there are 6 of them. I mean 5, right? 3 Pegasus, 2 Wyverns, yeah. So I think Farna's better here. In the final chapter, Athos is definitely better. Before that, Farna wins all the way. I'm pretty sure her like 6 maps of being available, or even more actually. 25, 26, 7, 8, it's quite a few maps. Athos versus Carla. Well, rip Carla. Renault versus Carla. See, I think this is like, yeah, Carla joins like a second earlier, but Renault is pretty good when you get him. Jafar versus Vida. Okay, so Manx's run of FE7 actually made me respect Jafar quite a bit. He was not bad at all. And the 0% growth run that I recently saw a while back with Jafar, he was also pretty good. So I'm kind of biased for Jafar. Don't get me wrong, Vida is really good too. It's like, if Har was in FE7 and he joined very late, yeah, that would be Vida, basically. She's pretty strong. She can double stuff, she can use brave weapons. But Jafar is really good against Valkyries. He doubles them. It's insane. It's pretty helpful. Just sucks that it doesn't have 1-2 range like Vida, but you know, Jafar is around for like more for longer. And I think when units have this little availability, the availability that they do have, and the utility that they do have is pretty big. So I'm tempted to go with Jafar here, which is pretty insane considering he's like sword locked 6 move versus A swords, A lances, or is it B? I think that doesn't matter. She's never reaching S rank anyway. Either way, she can use high level weapons. I want to say Vida, but like she's around for what? Sense of Time and Victory or Death and Final Chapter, that's it. Jafar isn't for much more though. We'll go with Jafar. That was my gut anyway. I can't think this long for every character. We're only at 80%. Actually, that's a long further than I thought. At this rate, it shouldn't be more than an hour long. Nino versus Vida. Well, Vida, here you go. Pent versus Harken. Both of these are really good pre-promotes, but Pent joins significantly earlier. And by significantly, I mean like 2 chapters basically, because Harken joins at the end of his, whereas Pent joins at the start of his. I think Harken is like turn 8, turn 9 or something. He actually costs turns to recruit, but I'm not going to count that against him. Yeah, we'll go with Pent here. I do think Harken is better than Louise though. Don't get me wrong, Louise has utility, but Harken's stats are so insane. Especially the fact that he can use hand axes, whereas Louise doesn't even have a 1-range weapon. It's so huge. Geats versus Heath. As I said, I'm not counting recruitment costs against the unit, so the fact that you have to train Lynn, Ellywood, and Hector to a level you don't really want them to doesn't really count against Geats, in my opinion. But still, Heath is a really good flyer. Hawkeye versus Geats. Yeah, these two are pretty similar. Geats has a B-level bows that he can use over Hawkeye as like a main advantage. Hawkeye has the crit bonus and he can walk on water and peaks. And Hawkeye also joins a little earlier. 2 chapters, but not insignificant ones. In the desert he can't really do much, but in Genesis he's pretty good actually. Especially since in Genesis your deployment is so limited. And he's just forced in. He doesn't cost a unit slot, which is really nice. So based on that alone, I would actually already give the edge to Hawkeye, but I think he also has like higher durability and stuff, higher resistance too. I think even higher luck. I'd have to check that, but I can't be bothered. Fiora versus Ninian. Ninian wins, because really good. Don't get me wrong, they're both really good. Fiora versus Isadora. These are somewhat similar names. But Fiora's better, I think. Being a flyer that joins earlier, it's pretty hard to beat that. And when they are finally both around, when Isadora finally joins, she's not even like... She's only arguably better if that... I'd have to check the stats, but I don't think the stat edge Isadora has, if there are any, beats Fiora. And you can't really use Constitution as an argument, because, you know, both of them have pretty shit Constitution. The Gold versus Isadora. I would actually give this to Isadora. Because they don't join that far apart. But Legault, he just doesn't do all that much. Like I said, he shares credit for all the thievery he does with Matthew. Still quite a bit of it to do though, and he also gets desert items if you're not like rigging the RNG, which I don't think I should take into account, because RNG abuse is kind of like cheating. It's kind of tough, but I'm going to go with Isadora. I don't really like Legault too much. Canas versus Dart. Dart isn't actually very good. It's one of the few units that has hit issues in FE7 due to a shitty skill base, growth, and a pretty high base level. High base level is nice if you can use it to promote quickly, but in Dart's case, the Ocean Seal, you get it so late that you can't really early promote him. You actually want to promote him early, then you get the promo item. And it's also very expensive. It costs 50,000 gold, so you're screwing yourself over for 25,000 gold by promoting Dart. And money is pretty plentiful in FE7. You can definitely afford to do this, but especially if you're not doing ranked, then you're fine. So I don't think this is like too big of a blow, but it's like kind of annoying. And it's just one more thing that Canas has over Dart. It's not something that's like alone makes Dart bad, but when he's already not very impressive, we're gonna rate Dart below a bunch of people. Oswin versus Priscilla. Priscilla's really good. She's like the ultimate utility unit, right? She can rescue drop, she can heal, she can use the restore staff. So many things she can do. She can even warp at the end of the game. I think the rigged FE7 LTC, the one with growths, had like a godly Priscilla that could like kill everything in Conquer Destiny, because she's like the only unit that's like fast, has high resistance, and can one round enemies at 1-2 range. It's not many units can do that. Because the Pegasus, they weigh themselves down with their javelins. Oswin can't really compete with that, even though he's good early game. Oops, I meant to say Priscilla can't lose to Oswin. Lowen versus Rebecca. Rebecca's bad, so Lowen it is. How bad is Rebecca? Can you lose to Wallace? I don't think so. Rebecca can at least do some chip damage early game. She's forced into a couple maps, 12 through 14 basically. I think 14 has no competition for unit slots. After that, it's pretty unlikely you'll field Rebecca. But at that point, she has done more than Wallace ever will. Nils versus Matthew. Well, we were rating Nils for like Nils Ninian, so. Matthew versus Lucius. Interesting one. I really like Matthew's utility, and I actually kind of don't like using Lucius, although I generally don't really raise him in Lim mode. So that makes me kind of biased because I always get him level 3. And I'm also always more tempted to use him if I haven't gone through Lim mode, because then my Urk is worse. So that means I usually have a guiding ring left over, but then again, I cannot. I'm always like, I'm going to use Lucius. Oh wait, Canas joins. I'm just going to use him instead by, because you get one guiding ring very quickly. So yeah, I think Lucius is pretty good, to be honest. I just haven't been using him correctly, really. That's the problem. Sarah versus Urk. I like Urk as a unit a lot. People underrate him. They're like, oh, he's worse than Pent. You just ditch him for Pent, but they're both really good. Like Canas, Urk can just get to A stabs if he wants to. And by the time it matters, he can use Warp. It just takes some time. And due to enemy low resistance, it's pretty easy to get Urk to one round enemies. Sarah just takes quite a while to promote. She just needs to get to Physic. And then she starts gaining XP like mad. But until then, her XP gain is pretty shit. So I'm going to go with Urk. Sane versus Florina. Well, Florina flies and Sane doesn't, so it pretty much seals it. Sane has better combat for quite a bit, but at some point Florina's combat becomes good, and then Sane just has no chance. Like, Florina can use like Killer Lances to make up for bad stats, but Sane can't grow wings, so Florina it is. You can beat Will, though. You can beat Will. Hey, it's Lindis. Bye. I don't like Lynn. Do I like Lynn less than Eliwood? That's a good question, because if you're not using either of them too much, then I think Lynn is better, because she has a good base speed. If you go through Lim mode, she's pretty fast. She has good early game offense, but her durability is crap. Because she uses swords, she gets countered every time, and then she gets 2-hit KO'd. Eliwood has a similar problem, but he can get to surviving 2 enemy hits if you train him. And he gets a horse and promotion, which is huge. Horse and lances gives him 1-2 range instead of Lynn's semi 1-2 range, where she has to choose between a sword and a bow. That's really bad. Like, she can never counter a full flock of enemies without like a light brand or something, which is a bad weapon. So once they promote, Eliwood is better by so much that I think the edge Lynn has by early game doesn't even matter anymore. And once Eliwood is trained, he can actually double shit. So Marcus versus Bartra. Well, best unit in the game. Oh, good job, Barter. You beat Merlis. Tie. Playable. There we go. Pent versus Jafar. Pent joins earlier and he's better. No questions asked. Same thing. Louise is actually not that good. That sounded very smartass. I had a discussion the other day about how saying actually makes you sound like a smartass because you're contradicting things. Anyway, Louise has no enemy phase. Jafar sometimes doesn't have an enemy phase, but only against 1-2 range enemies. And at least his player phase is really good. Louise sometimes has good player phase, but oftentimes she doesn't. Louise versus Fidah. Interesting. I'm half tempted to go with Louise, actually, which is strange to say, because I just had a very close matchup between Fidah and Jafar, which suggests that Fidah is actually better than Louise. I guess she is. I'll give Louise this one, alright? I'll give Louise this one. Ninian wins, because dancing is so good. Both of these are really good flyers, but Fiora joins quite a bit earlier, and by the time Heath joins, Fiora has her beat pretty severely. And normally Heath would counter this argument by saying, or if you were to defend Heath, you'd say, well, Heath flies, so it's okay, but Fiora flies too, so. Isidora is better when Heath joins, but as soon as Heath promotes, he outclasses Isidora pretty badly. He becomes so tanky and can double things reliably enough. A lot of people will be like, Heath also has hard mode bonuses. Yeah, well, I already factored that in, alright? You can compare Heath with and without hard mode bonuses. It's not worth of an extra mention or anything. Even without his hard mode bonuses, though, Heath is better, I think. Although he has a bit more... Well, he doesn't really have trouble doubling, because the enemies also don't have hard mode bonuses then. But his speed looks a bit worse. Hawkeye versus Isadora. Well, so this is one of those close matchups where it's probably a good idea to get into Isadora a little bit more. So, first off, Isadora is pretty hard to use. I will admit that. It's pretty hard to pick a right weapon for Isadora for the right situation. She can use a lot of them. Like, almost everyone. Because I think she has, like, C or B axes and A swords and A lances, I think. I'm gonna look that up just so I don't say anything stupid. Base stats. So slow. Okay, Isadora, where are you? What you got? Okay, yeah, I was right. A swords, B lances, D axes. Yeah, so Isadora can use a lot of weapons, but a lot of them weigh her down. This is fine because she still doubles, but if she doesn't have weapon triangle advantage, she can get hit, and she generally only takes 2, maybe 1 hit before she goes down. So you need to be a bit careful, but if you use her well, she's pretty good. But Hawkeye is easier to use. You plop him in the middle of a group of enemies, and they all get countered by a hand axe or die to a brave axe. Or you can crit with the killer axe, right? Hawkeye is fine no matter what you do, and you can also do a little bit of weapon triangle control using the Sword Reaver. Whereas the only Reaver you really want Isadora to use is like a Lance Reaver. Isadora's mounted utility is still huge though. Like, having 2 more move and the ability to move again is great. She's better at moving around anywhere but the desert map. Although I think Hawkeye is also better in Genesis just for having the free unit slot. I'm gonna say Hawkeye just because he's one of the really good foot units, but don't be surprised if I rate Isadora over someone like Geets. Because Geets joins quite a bit later too. Geets' combat is still really good though. Maybe just for Mina, I should say Geets is better. Mina was blaming me for berserking Layla. Or berserking her into killing Geets. I don't know how that works. You're still the one who killed Geets. Don't blame me for things you do. Isadora, Geets, difficult. I'm gonna say Isadora. The Gold versus Geets. So I like Geets a bit better than a second thief, I think. Priscilla versus Canas. That's interesting. I'm gonna go with Priscilla because of the mount. And healing is a pretty exclusive thing to have. Until Canas promotes, of course. Which is not very long after his joining time. Like, the guy is a base level of 8. That's really nice. Kind of rambling. But I want to speed this up a little bit. Because, you know, we're half an hour in. Although a lot of it was intro, to be fair, and we're almost at 40%. Which means we have about 200, I think, to go. Oh, not to go, but like, as a total. Roughly, maybe more like 180. 190. I don't know. I'm bad at math, right? Oswin versus Canas. I'm gonna go with Canas. He has like more long-term use. So even though he joined significantly later, he has more utility than just early game utility. I will admit that for casual players, Oswin is really good though, but if you know FE7 pretty well, you don't really need Oswin to march in and take a bunch of hits. Raven versus Oswin. I'm gonna go with Raven here. He has enough durability to survive for the most part, and his offense is really good. It's good enough to overshadow his early game deficiency by not being around. Oswin is better than Dart though. Guy versus Dart. I almost want to say tie because they're both bad. By the time Dart joins, Guy outclasses him big time, and until Dart promotes, he's not winning against Guy, no way. Because until he promotes, he can't really use hand axes without a huge chance of missing. Like, if an enemy is on terrain, Dart is not hitting them, which sucks. Guy never has hit issues, so I'm gonna go with Guy. This is Ninian, so you beat Lowen. Lucius versus Lowen. I like Lowen quite a bit, actually. I think he's about as good as Kent and Sane if you don't raise him in limb mode. Because this list is going to assume that you do, he's going to be the worst Cavalier between them, but still pretty good. He doesn't really compete with many people for EXP, because most of the early game units in FE7, you're either not going to use him, or you're not going to give him too much EXP. Like, you don't need to feed Marcus or Oswin kills, they just get what they need by themselves, basically. But if Oswin weakens them, then Lowen is a pretty good candidate for finishing them off. Who else are you going to train? Eliud maybe. Hector, sure. But, you know, Lowen is a pretty good target for EXP. You can overlevel Lowen pretty easily. Lucius joins kind of underleveled. Yeah, and his durability is kind of bad. He does a good offense, but not to the point where, like, 2-hit KOs and doubles right from the start. He needs a bit of levels before he 2-hit KOs. And being fragile definitely has its disadvantages, so Lowen is definitely better than Rebecca, though. Like, Rebecca will never reliably 2-hit KO, unless she used, like, a silver bow. Matthew versus Rebecca. Yep, goodbye, Rebecca. Rebecca is going to end up on the bottom or something. You think Wrath is one of the few units she can beat, but when you promote Wrath, he's definitely better than Rebecca. Having him mount is so nice. He's like a superior version of her once he's trained, and it doesn't take so long to train that offsets how bad Rebecca is in the early game. Like, Rebecca's one of these units that I just give negative utility for being around. I mean, it helps when she's forced, because then there's no better alternative anyway. But once you have actual deployment slots, and FE7 limits you on unit slots pretty hard in some chapters. And Rebecca taking up one of those is actually bad for her, I think, because you could have used a better unit instead. Thorina versus Urk. I said I liked Urk, but I don't like him as much as a Flyer. 80 battles, there we go. Sane versus Urk. Yep, you can't win this Urk. This is going to look bad for Urk for right now, but I just think mounted units are better. But you can beat Will, I guess. Will isn't very good. Dorcas also isn't very good, but at least he counters enemies. Hector versus Marcus. This would be actually close in a lot of, like, I won't say bad players, but I'll say new players, because they'll think, like, Marcus steals EXP, while Hector is like a bro, and he killed everything for me and stuff. But Marcus is the better unit. Because, you know, EXP stealing isn't a thing. This is not FE8 Rengor mode. This is not a border Rengar plays FE7. This is just efficiency. Bartra versus Hector. This is an easy answer. Bartra versus Eliud. How painful is it that I have to think about this? Because, you know, Eliud has locked his swords for a long, long time. Whereas Bartra can use hand axes. He isn't very accurate with them, but he can use hand axes. And when he promotes, he can use bows. But then Eliud promotes and he uses, like, lances. I mean, Eliud is better, but Bartra is pretty bad. Bartra has some heavy chip damage though. Like, if neither of them double, then Bartra does so much more damage. And he has a better weapon triangle position. God, Eliud, why do I have to think about this? I still want to go with Eliud. Because, you know, Bartra has like a chance to get doubled in the early game by Brigands, which is so bad, but it's only a couple of Brigands. And if you proc speed, the one first point of speed for Bartra is so important. It lets him double soldiers too. Oh god. We'll go with Eliud. Lin. I'll say Bartra is better than Lin, just to piss off Lin fanboys. Oops. Tie. Okay, Ninian I think is better than Pence, because dancing. Flying, does that beat Pent? Yeah, I think so. Like, I think I rate Pent a little lower than most people would, just because his availability is kind of low. and he doesn't have a mount. Those are his only flaws, but they are big flaws when you're competing against the likes of Fliers and early game joining mounts. Although Fiora is not the greatest flyer ever, she does have strength issues. Maybe I will go with Pence. Nah, I still like Fiora's availability more. Heath, I think, is a bit harder to train to the point where I'm going to rate Pent above him. I will say Heath is better than Harkin though. Like the availability gap is pretty big. Same for Hawkeye versus Harkin. We got a battle between wife and husband. Most people will say Harkin is better in a heartbeat, but I'm not so sure because Harkin joins really late, and I value availability pretty big. Is that how you say it? I value it pretty big? I don't think that's correct, but whatever. Anyway. Screw it. I'm gonna go with Harkin. Well, that's close. Jafar joins not that much later from Harkin, but no hand axe is a big deal to the point where I'm gonna say Isadora. Geets is also better than Jafar for sure. Legault versus Jafar, hey, they're both assassins. Just kidding, you don't promote Legault. Yeah. I'm kind of a Jafar fan at this point, gameplay wise, okay? I don't like the edgy ... I just like killing things, killing Valkyries. It's pretty good. Legault can't do it. He just steals a couple things. Does he even steal anything? Yeah, he steals a hero crest from Oleg. But Matthew can do it too, so he steals like half a hero crest. Gonna go with the golds. Close though. This is Ninian. I think Ninian's better than Priscilla. Lowen versus Priscilla. Early joining mounts, but I think healing is nice. Maybe not as nice as Lowen though. I think both of these are really good. I'm gonna go with Priscilla, I think, but it's close. It's very close. Lowen versus Canas. I like Canas more. I think Lowen is the better unit. Yeah, I think if you listen to my earlier rant about Lucius and Canas, I think you know the answer here. But Lucius will join at, let's say, also level 8. Is that fair? I think it's fair. They join at basically the same time, because Lucius, you can't really do much with him in chapter 17. And then 17x Canas joins on turn 1. So basically the same availability. Canas is a bit sturdier. Lucius can probably double enemies. I don't know if he 2-hit KOs. I don't think he does. Maybe some of them. Some of the pirates for sure. You can't 2-hit KO shamans though. I like Canas more. Lucius does have C-level staffs though. So you can use like barrier right away. Which is pretty cool if you're buying barrier in Dragon's Gate. Even in Kinship's Bond, Canas probably cannot use barrier. And being able to spam barrier is nice, so Lucius it is, I guess. I like, excuse me, I like Canas more than Matthew. I think I'm kind of remembering Donon's rating topic at one point, and he rated Matthew like a 7 and Canas like an 8, or actually he rated Canas lower, but I think Canas at this point is like an 8. So that's kind of my reference here. Raven versus Matthew. Close, but I'm going to go with Raven. And here I'm going to go with Matthew though. Wrath versus Oswin. So basically early game versus mid game. Because late game neither of them are very useful. Wrath more so than Oswin, but not to the point where he's like a significant edge. I think since early game is the harder part, where help matters more, whereas Wrath is like less necessary. I don't think necessity is a great way to rate units, but trying to play the game without Oswin is harder than playing it without Wrath, I think. Wrath versus Guy. I think Wrath is better, actually. It's the better Sakan. Rebecca versus Guy. Well, they're both early game utility, except Rebecca is only there because, you know, she's forced, whereas Guy is more like you don't really have better alternatives. Actually, that's the case for both of them, but like Guy's offense early game is actually good. He's actually got the best early game offense besides Marcus. Maybe Hector versus Armor Knights. Whereas Rebecca is nowhere near your best unit. Rebecca versus Dart. Hey, this is their brother and sister, aren't they? Free utility. So like in an LTC context, you would say Rebecca's better just because she does things whereas Dart does not do things. But as a long-term unit, Dart is a lot better. The moment he promotes, he blows Rebecca out of the water. Marcus versus Florina. I can see why the sorter is giving me this because I rated both of these above like everyone else they came up against. I think Florina is like second best, whereas Marcus is the best. Florina, yeah, second best. Like Hector is not that good. He just hasn't had a really tough matchup yet. Like Sane. Sane is a pretty tough matchup. The problem with Hector is that he can never get a mount. And he has some doubling issues, not much, but some. Unless you're like Mags's Hector. But he definitely has some issues doubling. And he also promotes so late, whereas Sane can probably promote quickly, as long as you have like a Nightcrest for him, or you use the limb mode Nightcrest. That makes him like one of the best units in the game. Like almost Marcus level. Same for Kent. Hector versus Urk. Oh, I think most people would say Hector. I'm actually not so sure. I really like Urk's. Like, limb mode trained Urk is really strong and fast. Kind of fragile though. I think I usually give him the rope, so I might be kind of biased. Hector's offense early game is so good. But Urk is so much better once he promotes. Like, so much better. Like, 6 movements, and he can move fast in the desert. He has 1-2 range with Thunder, whereas Hector would have to use a hand axe. Hector has a free deployment slot, though. I didn't really take that into account yet. Urk is competing for a unit slot, whereas Hector is always fielded for free in Hector hard mode. So I'm going to go with Hector here. Because I felt like it was kind of close already. But that's a pretty big factor. Not so much for Eliwood, though. I don't like Sarah too much, but her utility is like better than Eliwood's, right? Eliwood is just such a shit unit, to be honest. He's good after promotion, but it takes so long to get in there. Why do you get Heaven Seal so late? I think I had Eliwood beat Bartra. I'm gonna put Dorcas above him. Because Dorcas can... he's not a liability like Bartra is. He's just not that good. But if neither of them double, then Dorcas is like significantly better against most enemies. Alright, Will, you're kind of like the guy being picked on all the time. He's like, unit loses a somewhat close matchup and then they go up against Will and they're like, oh, at least I can beat Will, right? See, it's kind of like this. Like, sure, Bartra's really bad, but Will, it's only one chapter where what he does is even remotely good, and that's his joining chapter. Oh, hey, it's the Lin mode rejects. I'm gonna go with Lin here, with pain in my heart, because I wanted to rate Lin the lowest. Ninian is like one of the best again. Hey, Pegasus sister matchup. Actually, this is no contest. I don't know. I was kind of spacing out there. That had nothing to do with the matchup. Fiora joined so much earlier that by the time Farina joins, a straight stat comparison will show you that Fiora is better. So even though Farina has like the better strength growth and base for her level, Fiora has her outclassed for too long. Like even if Farina was better in a 1-to-1 matchup, when they join, Fiora has had so much utility before that time that Farina's better. Same for Fiora versus... Wait, did I click Farina? I meant to click Fiora. Okay, Pent versus Farina. Yeah, Pent is better. Although Farina is... This is actually one of the few units that Pent... Sure, that Farina beats at availability, even if it's only one map. But Pent is pretty damn good. Underleveled Fliers. But by the time Farina joins, he probably is promoted, so he wins. Hawkeye versus Farina. You know, I can see Farina being better if you're really valuing flyer utility, which I do. Hawkeye also has that pretty big availability gap. It's like Genesis and Four-Fanged Offense. And then Crazed Beast is also basically another chapter where Farina is, unless you take your time, which I guess I should assume you sort of do. Like, I'm not saying you should LTC it, but I'm just saying I think it's viable to train her on the monks. I think that's fair. In which case, Farina, I think, is better than Hawkeye after that. So Hawkeye wins for about 3 maps, and then Farina wins the rest of them. So I guess technically Farina is better. Athos versus Hawkeye, yeah, Hawkeye is better. I don't think Athos can really beat good units that are around for a longer time. So Athos is gonna end up pretty low, even though it's really, really good. Like, if you have to choose in the final chapter between Geats and Athos, yeah, sure, I'd pick Athos any day, but Geats is around for like 10 maps before that. But Gold versus Athos. This is one of the few units I can see Athos above, because I don't like the Gold much. He doesn't, yeah, I've said this before, he doesn't do much. We're also 2/3 done, so I think we can do under an hour. The Gold, Athos. Gonna click Athos here. The Gold versus Renault. Fine, we'll give this one to the Gold. I still think Renault is good. The fact that he can warp, recover, hammer, and that kind of stuff is all very nice. Physic too, fortify, all you ever want. He doesn't have that much magic, but he doesn't need it. He can do just fine with what he has. If you need him to restore someone to full HP, just use recover. And the last few maps are not so big that you need a very big warp range, so don't underestimate the Gold. Renault. But the Gold is around for so much longer. Both of these units I kind of like. But Jafar is really strong. And Renault is like literally stat utility for the end of Victory or Death, Value of Life, and Final. That's it. 3 maps. Jafar is like twice as much at least. He has Night of Farewells, Conquer Destiny, where he's really good. Sense of Time, and then Victory or Death. So it's like 4 more maps, I think. I think that's plenty. Same for Vida. Louise. Technically Louise is like bad at combat, right? But it's not so bad that it's like negative utility. She does give Penta support to make him really durable. It's part of what makes Pence so easy to use on enemy phase. You just plop him in range of a bunch of enemies. You put Louise at like 3 range so that a bunch of enemies can attack him. But so that Louise is out of range, and then Pent will always survive and wreck everything, because he gets +3 defense. So that makes Louise pretty useful for quite a long time, even if she never sees combat. Yeah, Renault is better than Nino, definitely. Tough matchup right here. So by the time Carla joins, you could potentially have trained Nino to be like halfway decent, if you want to. Whereas Carla will never be good for you. But if you don't want to invest in these units at all, then Carla's better, because Nino is a bad mage at level 5 with shitty bases that doesn't double. Whereas Carla, she can double some axe enemies in Victory or Death, but it's not really useful. So, tough one, because this is Ninian. Marcus, you're the best unit in the game, but it's getting close. And you're the second best unit in the game. Can I tell you guys how useful Florina is if you go through Limb mode? She's like the best candidate for the Angelic Rope and the Energy Ring, and those solve her issues pretty well. And at that point, she just takes off really quickly. If you don't go through Limb mode, Florina's really bad, because her Hector mode bases are awful. And I actually think Fiora's better if you do that, but we're assuming Limb mode, and I think it's pretty likely that you'd give her the rope and the ring. See, if this was like FE6 and we were doing Lance versus Lalem or whatever, I think Lalem is better, because Lance's combat isn't that much better than the alternatives, but Saint's combat is good enough to where he one-rounds like everything, and he's around for so much longer, and he has the potential to promote in Limb mode. So I think Saint is better, especially if you promote him with the Limb mode Nightcrest. Same for Kent. Hector versus Nils, I do think Nils can take this. Priscilla, I think, is definitely better than Hector, thanks to the mount. Same for Lowen. Lucius, yeah. I think I rated Urk below. I rated Urk below Hector, so I should raise Lucius below Hector as well, because I think Urk is better than Lucius. See, there we go. Yeah, I think Urk is better, because you can get him to roughly the same level at the end of Limb mode, I think. Maybe Urk a little more. Depends on what you do with him, because Urk joins earlier at a lower level. In both modes, really. So I'm gonna go with Urk. Like, the only advantage Lucius has is, like, I've calculated this in depth a couple of times. The differences are not that big between the two that some people think. Like, yeah, Lucius is fragile, but so is Urk. And sure, Lucius can face crits sometimes, but Urk's luck is that much better. And the tactician bonus kind of overrides it for the most part. The biggest difference is really Lucius's C staffs to Urk's E. But I don't think this difference is too significant, considering Urk has all the time in the world to build up staff rank. But he does have more availability for quite a bit, in fact. Sarah versus Lucius, I do think Lucius is better. Same for Canas. I think these three, Lucius, Canas, Urk, are very similar, and they should be rated about the same. Raven definitely better than Sarah. 2 utility units. Gonna go with Matthew here. Early game utility, but Oswin's is amazing. Sarah versus Wrath is interesting. Sarah, I don't think she really should be using her beyond chapter 15 or so. But if you do choose to use her, she's pretty okay in the long term. Especially for like restore using, it's pretty nice to have one of those in Hector Harp mode. Some status staffs flying around. Wrath is a nice addition to your team, but he's not as, available for one. It's just nice to have. I do like him better than Dorcas though. He can double things, that's important. Doubling, I like doubling, that's important. 1-2 range is important too. Do you want a unit that you can throw into a group of enemies and counters a bunch of them? And then over the course of 2 turns you will probably kill them because he 2-hit KOs and doesn't double. Or do you want a guy that just, do you want a guy that just kills one of them and then he fills the counter like half of them. And then he draws other enemies away from your good units because he can never get 1-2 range. Yeah, I think I'll take Dorcas. 2 sword units. Guy actually has a much better early game because of his speed. But once Eliwood promotes, he is better. It just takes so long. My god. One thing I don't like about Guy is that he forces you to use more guiding ring users to go to Kenneth, because I don't want to go to Kenneth's Pale Flower of Darkness. I want to go Kenneth. I don't want to go Germ, whatever. But I'm gonna go with Guy. I do think Eliwood is better than Dart. They both have promotion problems. Dart does promote earlier than Dart. Dart promotes earlier than Eliwood is what I meant. 8 more minutes, 20%. Eliwood or Dart? I guess we'll go with Dart. And here we'll go with Eliwood. He has long-term potential. Rebecca does not. Same-ish for Bartra, not really, but you know what I mean. I like how it alternates between the top and the bottom of the list. That's fun. Lynn versus Rebecca. Yeah, Lynn is better. Hey, Archer duel. Well, Rebecca has more free utility than Will, so there we go. If there's one unit Will can beat, it's Wallace. Wallace is not good. Marcus is the best. Florina is second best. Yeah, this is familiar territory. I've already rated these units above Nils, I think. So, okay, these are a tie. Okay, so we've got Priscilla versus Fiora. And, doesn't take too long for Fiora to join after Priscilla does. It's 5 maps-ish. Priscilla joins basically chapter 15. So she's got 15, 16, 17, 7x. Actually, that's quite a few maps. Fiora does have flyer utility though. It's really good compared to just a mount. It's a lot of terrain in FE7. In some maps, Fiora is blowing her out of the water, like the desert map or Night of Farewells. Gonna go with Fiora here, I guess. Might be kind of overrating Fiora, but I think she's alright. Pent versus Priscilla. I think Priscilla's better. They're almost they have the same weapons. They have anima, magic, and staves. Priscilla joined so much earlier. Same for Lowen. Again, a lot of people would probably rate Pent over Lowen right away because first impressions matter a lot. And a few people that use Lowen in the long term will probably find his doubling problems kind of annoying. Whereas Pent has never been a bad unit for anyone. But I think Lowen's utility for, 50 maps before Pent joins is significant enough. So, Pent versus Hector, I do think Pent is better. think Hector loses to like units with a lot of long-term viability. Farina though joins so late that she doesn't have that many turns to hold the fact that she can promote earlier over Hector's head. But Hector still doesn't really do much after Farina joins. It takes him until like Sense of Time to promote basically. Well, he has his own map I guess, but that one is dumb. But Hector does have really good early game utility, so I'm gonna go with this to Hector. Urk versus Farina. We're almost there, 14% left. Which should be like 20 battles, roughly. I thought we were over half done when it said 104. Urk versus Farina. We'll go with Urk here. And Lucius and Canas. Predictable. And Raven. Matthew I'm not too sure on, but he does have the early game thief utility. I like Farina quite a bit when she's trained, but you gotta take into account that she joins very late. And that her start is not the best ever. That she does need a bit of slowing down before she gets good. We'll take Matthew here. And Oswin. Oh, I hate rating an Armor Knight higher than a Flyer so much. But Oswin is strong, dude. And he's also a lot more available. Okay, this is where I draw the line, man. Is it, though? Because I already said I don't mind Sarah as a long-term unit too much. She's okay. She's not amazing. Farina is pretty amazing when she is amazing. But it takes, like... it takes until at least chapter 26 before she is amazing. And then, like, half the maps left are, like, defend maps. Ugh. Sarah, really? Okay. Farina versus Wrath. I do think Farina wins here. Ooh, this is tough, because they join at, like, the same time. Wrath joins in Kinship's Bond, and the Hawkeye joins the chapter after. He doesn't do much in that one, though, but then again, neither does Wrath. Then Hawkeye, like, wins in Genesis. Wrath only has one more move until he promotes, then he has two more move. And then Wrath is pretty good. I don't know if he's better than Hawkeye, though. Hawkeye is pretty good. Do I think a Wrath beats Harkin? Well, you know, in a map like Cog of Destiny, Harkin is much more useful because you can just route enemies after enemies. Just use a barrier of pure water and go to town. Whereas the Wrath is more like a stealth killer. Kills like a couple of dudes here and there. He ferries people around with his mount. He brave bows someone through a wall. He does sneaky stuff, but he doesn't really help you that much otherwise. He's just nice to have. But then again, Harkin joins so late. But he's really good in the maps he is around in. I guess they're almost the same, because Wrath has like a couple of mid-game maps where he's really good, whereas Harkin has a couple of late-game maps. The late-game maps are almost all defend, whereas Wrath's maps are like a route or kill boss. We'll go with Wrath here. I do think Harkin is better than Dorcas. It's closer than you might think, because Dorcas is around for so much longer. But by the time Harkin joins, he kind of sucks. He's not very good. And he competes for unit slots with like a lot much better people. So I do think there's such a thing where, as negative utility, like I explained with Rebecca, being around for a long time isn't a guarantee for, you know, bonus points unless you're actually good, which Dorcas is not. Alright, 10% left. And we're at 190. So shouldn't be much more than 10 or 20 left. Isadora or Dorcas? Memes. That's all I can come up with. That's all that's in my head. Memes. I like Isadora better, for sure. Yeah, Geets is better. Oh my god, is Athos better than Dorcas? I guess so. Dorcas is really bad in the long term. Didn't I rate Dorcas below... Who did I rate him below? There was some sword user. Was it Guy or was it Jafar? I think I might have rated Dorcas over Jafar, which might mean I have to rate him over Athos. Screw it. Athos is better. This is gonna screw up my list, I don't know it. Dorcas versus Legault. Jafar versus Dorcas. So it wasn't Dorcas versus Jafar? Was it Hawkeye or something? I don't remember. I had like a bit of a break earlier, which you can probably tell by an edit, but Dorcas versus Jafar. Jafar is good. He's not around much. Dorcas is very good. Same for fight. Poor Dorcas. He beat Louise. I read a debate a long time ago. I might link it in the description if I remember. That like had one person defending Dorcas and the other person defending Louise. This was from the time when debates were like a sport in the Fire Emblem community. So you would pick a unit, and then they would pick a unit, and then you just debate until you had 3 posts each, and the judges decide the winner. So it wasn't about making objectively good arguments. It was about trying to beat the other person by making like trickery arguments and unfair arguments, and trying to slip them past the jury, basically. And Dorcas kicked ass in that debate. Like Dorcas, because this was back when you could argue for including supports, and when Dorcas gets like a support from, who's he supporting again? I think he supports like Oswin for like Anima X Fire, so he gets like 15 avoid from that and +3 attack. He wrecked Louise so hard, so I'm biased in that regard. But I'm gonna go with Louise here. I'm even gonna go with Renault over Dorcas. How do you like that? I will take Dorcas over Nino though. I'll take Guy over Nino. Dart versus Nino. Elwood versus Nino. Poor Nino. Poor Nino. Poor Nino. Poor Nino. Alright, Carla. Yeah, Merlin is still not being tiered. I don't know why I'm thinking. Oh, okay, we have a couple more battles left apparently. Tai. Oh, we're done. Okay. Here we go. Oh, we do have images now, but just 3 of them. Okay. So, I need to make sure I can show it on screen. So, Marcus is the best unit, is what I thought. Florina, Sane, Kent. Yeah, this is all according to Kaikaku. We've got a tie between Ninian and Nils. That's what we wanted. Fiora, Priscilla, Loan. This is a segment I'm not too sure of. Like this whole part right here. They're all very close. I'd say they're around like a 7 to 8 out of 10. All of these are pretty close. But they're in the right area, and that's what matters. Matthew and Legault, I think, are pretty tough to evaluate because Thief Utility is hard to rate, but I think I did an okay job. Then we got some early game units that don't do much beyond. Got a late game unit like Farina. That's pretty good, but not around much. Got a mid game squad right here. I like how Harkin ended up right above Isadora. That's cute. Athos is also very hard to rate. You screw you. Jafar, Vida, Louise. Yeah, I think Renault is higher for me than most people's, but I think my reasoning is valid. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this overall. Carla's the worst unit, Nino's second worst. Yep, I'm happy with. Oh, Lynn is really low. She's basically below. She's right above all the units people agree are bad, and then below Bartra. People are not gonna like this. Alright, so that's it. That's my tier list. I'll put it in the description if I remember. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. And if you have any suggestions about what game to do next, then let me know.